The Red Oak Inn. This is lovely, Grandma Edna gushed as she took in the cheerful suite of rooms she had booked for herself and her two grandchildren. It's nice, 10-year-old Debbie replied, forcing a smile. Staying at a boring old inn was not her idea of a vacation. So, what is there to do here? Debbie's older brother, wanted to know. He suspected that he already knew the answer: nothing. Edna appeared not to notice her grandchildren's lack of enthusiasm. The Red Oak Inn has an exceptionally fine library of great historical significance, she answered. I can't wait to see it. Jessie and Debbie looked at each other in disbelief. Wasting their vacation looking at dusty books and faded photographs was even worse than they had imagined. Staying at the Red Oak Inn in the Ohio River Valley was all Grandma Edna's idea. Grandma Edna had traced her family tree back to African American slaves who had traveled along the Underground Railroad, a trail of safe a trail of safe houses where slaves could rest and hide as they made their way north to freedom. Grandma Edna suspected that her ancestors had come through this part of Ohio. She was compiling a list of places where they stayed on their dangerous route to freedom. She wanted to chronicle their journey for her grandchildren and future descendants so that they could better appreciate their own proud heritage. Debbie and Jessie had made it very clear that they would prefer to go to a water park. They had learned about the Underground Railroad at school. It was ancient history to them. They did not identify with their slave ancestors the way that Grandma did. By the time Jessie and Debbie were born, the United States was a different place than it had been in the 1960s, when Grandma Edna was a child living in the segregated southern town. At least the food is good, Jessie whispered to Debbie as the waitress cleared their plates. Before dinner, Jessie and Debbie had explored the Red Oak Inn. The old mansion hadn't looked so sizable from the outside, yet they quickly got lost among the labyrinth of corridors and staircases, hiding behind unmarked doors. It was only when they heard Grandma Edna calling their names that they were able to follow her voice back to their suite to dress for dinner. Grandma Edna thanked the waiter, daintily dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin, and stood up from the table. That was delicious, she said. Now, let's go to the library. Debbie and Jessie followed her, unenthusiastically, to a large room with floor to ceiling shelves packed with books of every shape and size. Debbie recognized some of the titles. She pulled a classic mystery from one of the shelves and sat down to read. Jessie plopped down in an armchair and sulked. There wasn't a television anywhere at this inn, and no internet either. He watched as his grandma pulled book after book from the shelf marked Ross Country History. Then Grandma Edna pulled out a small notebook and pencil from her handbag and began scribbling away. Jesse must have dozed off because the next thing he knew, his sister was shaking him awake. You've got to take a look at this. She was holding what looked like an old sketchbook, open to a page with a drawing of a big, beautiful mansion. I think this has something to do with the Underground Railroad, she said. Jesse rubbed the sleep from his eyes. It looks like this place, only not so old and grubby. Together, Jesse and Debbie flipped through the pages of the book. There were other drawings in the book of staircases and furnished rooms. Some of them looked familiar. I know where that is. Jesse jumped up from the chair. A moment ago, he had fallen asleep from boredom. Now he felt his body vibrating with energy. Follow me. Jesse raced to one of the back staircases they had seen earlier when they had gotten lost. Those pictures in the book are like directions, Jesse said. But directions to where? Debbie asked. She still had the book in her hand. That's what we're going to find out, Jesse said confidently. Use what you have learned about the characters and setting of the Red Oak Inn to write what happens next. Remember, your writing should include narrative techniques such as description, dialogue, and pacing, and should build on the events that already happened in the story. Plan your narrative in the space below where it says plan, and then continue to write your narrative where it says write your narrative on the lines below. Good luck.